all started with this tweet from Tom Henderson. Epic Games' Rumbleverse will be shutting down at the end of February. Where is this coming from? Nothing was posted or said about it. Me. I think store listing starts today, so there's probably an announcement coming. Source, trust me, bro. So if you're like me and you don't know who Tom Henderson is, he's apparently a fairly well-known COD leaker. He does have 223,000 followers on Twitter. From everything I hear, he's fairly accurate, not 100%. Why is this coming from his personal account about a game he doesn't usually talk about? It's a bit of a surprise tweet in a lot of ways, but it did get a lot of traction, has over 2,000 likes, a lot of responses, such as popular streamers such as Lyric weighing in on the situation, how he enjoyed the game. But it's over half a day later and the game is still up, both on PlayStation and Epic, and from what I can see from the internet, still on the Xbox Microsoft Store. So it hasn't happened exactly when he predicted. It could still happen tomorrow or sometime this week. But what does it mean for a game to get delisted? Why do they get delisted? This coming at the end of February. It's only 6 months since the game dropped. Season 3 coming soon. And while we don't have an official word from Rumbleverse, Iron Galaxy, or any of the devs, I want to give you an idea of why something like this could happen, what to expect if it is true, and just why this rumor could get started in the first place. So we already talked about the who, Tom Henderson, COD leaker, kind of out of nowhere, but fairly well known and respected in a completely different game. As you guys might have noticed, the leak community for Rumbleverse is not huge, being part of it myself. So this is coming from a seemingly random, but albeit interesting place. What does it mean for a game to get delisted? Obviously that means it's getting taken off of these stores, but what are the general reasons around that? A lot of the time it has to do with licensing, whether a game has music or properties. I heard a lot of people mention something like cars. Those types of licenses usually have some kind of time frame tied to them. And once they come up for renewal, if the game's not still making enough money, they won't get renewed, the game will get taken down. While Rumbleverse doesn't have a lot of branded or licensed content inside the game itself, it does bring us to the ever important topic of money, which we'll talk about a little bit later. Tom's tweet references the game's getting delisted today, again, hasn't happened yet, and says that the game will be shut down at the end of February. That is only 6 months after the game's release, which by all counts is very quick. Tom's tweet doesn't give any specific dates, but Season 3 is scheduled to hit on around February 21st, according to the Battle Pass info. Some people are speculating that this is just confusion somehow with that. The game always goes down when there's an update, new season, etc. As far as a leaker or getting information is concerned, I don't think that could be misconstrued. Delisting and maintenance are definitely very different things. And as far as Tom is concerned, this is the only info we have. It has been picked up by a handful of websites, but they're the kind of pseudo-news video game websites that are looking for clicks even harder than an IGN or a Dexerto. He's referenced nothing else or given any further responses in any of the replies. Iron Galaxy being a small company and Rumbleverse being a relatively small game, it is hard to find any kind of rumor mill type of news out on the internet. If you played the game recently or regularly, I think this is coming as a surprise to a lot of the community. It just doesn't really make sense because it always feels like the game is getting better. Every update, every season, it's just constantly improving. Trios, quads, bringing a lot of life to the game. Lobbies really do feel healthy. So it does seem really surprising that Epic or Iron Galaxy would have to pull the plug. But why might this be happening? How could this happen? So without getting too boring or too in-depth or too technical with the whole situation, it is really important to touch on Iron Galaxy's deal with Epic, or what it might be. This deal breakdown is pulled from 2020 when they were announcing the next games from Design, Playdead, and Remedy Entertainment. This is coming from Epic themselves. The Epic Games approach to publishing fundamentally changes the developer/publisher model and aims to have the most developer-friendly terms in the industry so that creators can focus on making great games. Obviously, that sounds fantastic if you're a game creator, and these details do seem pretty attractive. Full creative freedom and ownership. Developers retain 100% of all intellectual property and full creative control of their work. Coming from a creative standpoint, retaining the control of that IP is huge. That part is important for Iron Galaxy moving forward, regardless of what happens. These next 2 points weigh in pretty heavy with this rumor. Fully funded projects. Epic Games Publishing will cover up to 100% of development costs, from developer salaries to go-to-market expenses such as QA, localization, marketing, and all publishing costs. That's big, and it's followed up by this next part, which is 50-50 profit sharing. Developers earn a fair share for their work. Once costs are recouped, developers earn at least 50% of all profits. It's at least 50-50. We don't know the exact details of the Iron Galaxy agreement with Epic, But going off of this, if it's the exact same or even similar, in the most extreme example, if 100% of these development costs were covered by Epic, and now we're in that period where we're trying to recoup those costs, if Epic isn't seeing that return, if the numbers aren't looking good, there's the potential that they would cut their losses. Are there any hints that this is what's going on? We don't know what the player base is. Without this being a monster success, you're not going to see it in the top sales figures up with Fortnite and Call of Duty. We also don't know what the time frame is that Epic's looking for a return on investment. 6 months does seem really short. It doesn't really seem like enough time to see a return, but it could be enough time to see that you're not going to get that return. Because while the game is live and hopefully earning money now, if there's not enough money coming in from battle passes and cosmetics to support the ongoing costs of the game, Epic is likely the one having to come in and support the game until it does. I would say this is a kind of worst case scenario, Rumbleverse just not living up to the hopes and expectations of Epic, who has up until now foot the bill for the whole thing basically. Again, we don't know if the agreement is exactly like this. It could be similar, it could be a little different in either direction. I'm not great at math, but I do think numbers are fun. I just happened to look at the Iron Galaxy salary range on Glassdoor.com. I was actually surprised. I'm not really seeing any base salaries under $50,000 a year. So we're gonna play with some numbers real quick. So if we take 4 years of development from 2018 to 2022 when the game came out last fall, and just run some very simple numbers, Wikipedia is saying that Iron Galaxy has about 250 employees. I've seen less before, I even quoted it in a video. Iron Galaxy also does ports and support work on other games. So let's say not everybody on the team was working on Rumbleverse around the clock. This is all just to give you an idea of what Epic might have in the game. Let's say we have 100 employees working on Rumbleverse. I mean, if 50K is the bottom salary, most of the software people are getting 75K plus. I don't know, maybe 100 is too generous. I mean, 100 people making 75K a year is $7.5 million. Seems like too much. What's a AAA game cost to make? Oh, it costs $200 million to make Elden Ring. Running these numbers sounds a little bit ridiculous, but I mean, Rumbleverse is a battle royale. It does have a lot of systems at play. Even just going kind of lowballing and saying if Epic supported 50 employees at around $50,000 a year, that's $2.5 million a year for 4 years. So we'll say Epic might be in for at least $10 million. There's a couple websites throwing out that Iron Galaxy brings in around $26 million a year. Until things get announced, we don't necessarily know what Iron Galaxy is working on. There are other teams, the other ports and support work they're still doing. You have to remember that Rumbleverse isn't the sole focus of Iron Galaxy. An article I saw from last year says that they have a desire to stay independent. That might be because no one's made them an offer that was good enough yet. Brings us to our next idea. Acquisition. Could the game get delisted if somebody bought out Epic and took on publishing for Rumbleverse? I don't know that the game would have to be delisted for this, but it is an idea that popped up that I thought could be interesting. In this kind of situation, it's basically what Epic did to Devolver with Fall Guys. Fall Guys blew up, Mediatonic and Devolver tried to support it for a while, but then, Epic came in, probably made them an offer that they couldn't refuse. Devolver at that point likely made their money back because Fall Guys was such a hit at the very beginning. So could we see a situation where there was another publisher, or even maybe one of the big three, that want to purchase Rumbleverse and take it over? I don't think that would mean it would need delisted, and I think it would be a bit surprising. In the same way, it seems a bit early for Epic to shut the game down because they haven't given themselves a proper chance to get their investment back. It would seem a little fast for somebody to want to scoop it up and take it on as their own, especially because it wasn't the smash hit of something like Fall Guys was. And I think for somebody to buy it off of Epic, it would have to be an Xbox, a PlayStation, or in some alternate universe, a Nintendo. So a slightly more positive and probably less likely scenario, maybe the game gets acquired, things need to be switched over, it goes off the stores for a second. Again, I don't think something needs to be delisted to change publishers like that, but going back to Fall Guys, it didn't get taken off the stores just because Epic bought it. It did get taken off of Steam though. In this scenario, maybe it's leaving Epic because it's going to Steam as part of an acquisition, would be about the best news to come out of this being true. And because it's cross-platform, cross-progression, PC players don't really lose out on having to switch. And even if it's anything like Fall Guys, I can still play that from Steam with my original account. So a more positive, but ultimately weirder and seemingly less likely scenario. Back to worst case scenarios, if you don't follow the news much, there have been a slew of tech layoffs throughout all the major companies in the past few months. People have been talking about a recession for 6 months or more. But I think especially in the tech industry, there's a lot of belt tightening going around. It could be a case of very bad timing where Rumbleverse released at a time where things were, sizing down, and it needed to do a lot better than what maybe it is to stay afloat and to keep going. That's a bit more tied to the industry and the economy at whole, but it does also fall back into the, Epic's original agreement and whatever resources and funds they have actually put into the development process of this game. But not the marketing. Epic, that's your job. It's part of the publishing agreement. Marketing is your job. Iron Galaxy has said that they don't like taking care of that kind of stuff. They know that a lot goes into that. That's why they develop. But that brings us into another possible best case scenario. It's a hoax. I don't want to bust out the tinfoil hat or anything, but you might have heard the saying, there is no bad press. Like I said, there's tons of people in these threads talking about how they never heard the game or they didn't know the game was out. People are talking about the game. This single tweet has so much engagement. How much do you have to pay Tom Henderson to tweet this out? I don't know, Tom, what's your price? How many brawler bills you got to give Tom Henderson to, if I'm not getting the marketing support I either want, or maybe the extra funds just aren't there for it, and I'm in a creative meeting about marketing, this would be the kind of thing I would go to. It's maybe not as positive as you would like it to be, but it is effective. It's working. Being about 3 weeks out from season 3, seemingly a little bit far. Could this lead into more kind of viral marketing, or just, being the beginning of a kind of discussion? Like I said, Rumbleverse, no response yet. Just checked. No new tweets, no official word. Again, we are in the first 24 hours of this, so you're not going to hear from the people we usually hear from about the game. That's not their job. I mean, it's the social media manager's job, but that'll come through the official channel, most likely. If they did pay Tom to say this stuff, he's a well-known leaker in a different kind of game. I don't know. I think it was worth $100. I would give them props if this was some kind of viral tactic, because I think I've thought about it and I've seen multiple people mention how they would love to see more marketing for the game. And, it is, again, a budget thing, and also goes in line with, making sure that the game itself is where it needs to be before. You don't want to go for that next big marketing push when you don't have a solid foundation that's going to keep people around. Does Rumbleverse have that right now? I'm not sure it does, but I do have at least 5 ideas of things that Rumbleverse does need to do this year in order to be the best game it can possibly be. And I'll talk about those on a future video. Do we have any information that would lead us to believe that Tom doesn't know what he's talking about? Maybe. One thing that I had already seen in the game's files, we have Season 3 and Season 4 folders. There's not a lot in there right now, but there's a move, there's a location. So these pieces were being worked on, and obviously Season 3 right around the corner, but Season 4 is still a few months off. So I was really surprised to see them working on something that soon, actively in the game, making it in the way. What I hadn't heard until today, but actually was released about 4 weeks ago, Rumbleverse was rated for the Switch in Taiwan. Oftentimes when there's a port or a re-release, that's how we hear about it a little early. It gets rated in another country, very often Taiwan, and then we learn that the port or release is expected very soon. Somebody else pointed out that it's 25 on the Epic Games Store free-to-play list. I did try to find solid numbers on where it might be on a similar PlayStation or Xbox list, but couldn't find that. And like I mentioned multiple times, Season 3 is right around the corner. Supposed to be February 21st, according to the clock on the Battle Pass. While we don't have any info on Season 3, it would seem a little close to that release for this to be going on. But also, if the shutdown is to come so soon, it is going to happen before another season rolls out. And while it's a bit biased, I think that people that play the game, they feel like the lobbies are healthy, the game's in a pretty good place, and that there's, consistent and good attention being paid to the game and the development. So it just feels odd that this would happen so soon. If it is a situation where the game's shutdown is a huge surprise to us, but also a surprise to the devs, I really hope that they didn't learn all the news from a Call of Duty leaker. What do you guys think about this leak? Does Rumbleverse really feel like a game that should be on its way out the door already? Let me know what you think down below. And if you aren't caught up on the most recent update, be sure to check out my speedrun where I go through all of the new major stuff that's coming 2.6. Be on the lookout for my video on what I think Rumbleverse needs to do next, and some really fun quads gameplay coming your way very soon. I hope you're still having fun out there and that we have many more months of Rumbleverse to come. I'll see you at ice cream.
How many KOs can I get, you think?